Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast. I'm Paul Ellis, your host for these programs about developments in this fast-growing industry. Weather TradeNet creates data analysis tools powered by weather data for operational business purposes. Founder and CEO Elena Maksimovich launched the online platform to differentiate, quantify, and report on the financial vulnerability induced by weather volatility in changing climate scenarios. The platform's research regarding weather shock resilience and climate change adaptation projects demonstrates bankable investment opportunities, and Weather TradeNet's proprietary Climate Risk Indices are adapted to business' needs in the context of TCFD reporting, climate risk audit, and parametric insurance underwriting. Maksimovich joins us today in the podcast program episode to explain how Weather TradeNet works. Hello, Elena, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast.
Hello, Paul, and thank you for organizing the Sustainable Finance Podcast. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm a big fan of your podcast. I'm listening every episode. Very interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that compliment. We'll pass that on to all of our other listeners. And first of all, please tell us how Weather TradeNet supplies the quantitative assessment of weather-induced financial risk to support energy and commodity trading markets.
Thank you. Yes, so a lot of fancy words, basically to do simple in quite clear financial analytics. So the companies and the households and so banks and insurance, they need to understand what are the climate risks. When you are buying your house, when you so the easy is a weather forecast for tomorrow, right? The easy understanding is vacation planning, but there are also similar decisions in business decisions. So similar approach. If I'm buying the house, is it the area where there are wildfires? If I'm investing in Coca-Cola or in Nestle, what about their supply chain? Did they think about climate change? So these are the very clear questions for companies. They need support. They need climate data. They need quality data, and we talk to companies to understand their supply chains, to understand their goals, what they are trying to master, and we provide very tailored data types. For example, for Nestle, companies need, for example, cacao assessment in future and during coming 5 years, whether they should keep the suppliers they already have, or should they maybe consider other locations. So very straightforward questions.
Okay. Great. Well, that's a good start. And now I'm going to ask you to walk us through the process for an asset manager or corporate client to use Weather TradeNet's Portfolio Scan online digital platform to evaluate the climate risk exposure for each individual asset and also for the entire portfolio.
Thank you. Yes, this is the kitchen, right? So this is where the most important happens. As you know, floods and droughts and wildfires, they are very local events. So it's very important to target the location, the coordinates on the Earth. These events, such as floods and wildfires, they repeat. They repeat every 2 years, 5 years, 20 years. So this evaluation, how frequent these events happen and how massive they are, this is the core. This is the most, let's say, the most technical part. So companies, they know where the business are located. They know where their factories are. They know where their suppliers are. So we provide this risk assessment. Every 2 years, every 5 years, every 10 years, how much money companies are losing different time steps due to climate hazards. So these are very important numbers for companies to evaluate their risks to decide whether they keep or whether they change their suppliers.
Okay, so you've talked a little bit now about over periods of time, several years at least. Tell us what you mean by the term nowcasting for precision agriculture and wind power supply forecasts.
Yeah, so in weather data, there are different timescales for risk assessment. So the very let's say well-known format for weather data is weather forecast, where it's typically 1 day or 5 days ahead. There is a very short forecast which is called nowcasting, and then there is a very long forecast which is for seasonal or annual or multi-year forecast. So nowcasting is used typically for wind power, for example, or solar power suppliers. So those who are selling or reselling the energy, this is their timescale. So weather trade networks on a longer timescale. So we evaluate the risks in very high time resolution, but over very long periods. Why we need a very long period? Because risk assessment, by definition, requires big data. So we need to capture all possibilities, all possible events which ever happen. So this we take very fine spatial resolution, but very long periods, which means 70 years, 150 years. To have these fantastic long periods, we use to get these periods predictive modeling. And for predictive modeling, what we inject inside are the climate model products, which is very similar to weather data, but it's running for much longer periods. So we use this climate products, temperatures and precipitations through a range of models. We combine these temperatures, precipitations with the satellite data. We reconstruct the data backwards and forward. And this is how we collect the high, like very long, high resolution and very long records. And this is where the technical part is the most solid. Let's say this long-term records for risk assessment, because risk, as you know, it's binary, so it's no, yes. So it's risk don't happen if something happens every day. It's not the risk, right? Because you're prepared. So risk it's a binary event. So it's like nothing, yes, nothing. So to capture those yes, you need really a long period.
Longer time frames, right, that you have to evaluate.
Yeah.
So, Elena, what does it mean to evaluate the impact of physical climate risks, and how does that work? Is that part of the process that you were just describing, or is it something else?
So the very simple example. So my colleague Falmer, he was on vacation in Norway this Christmas, and there was a huge snowfall. They had to catch their ferry to go back from Norway to Netherlands, and this was the day when there was a snowfall. And unfortunately, there were many cars stuck in the snow and accidents. Now everybody has to repair their cars, and this is the physical climate risk. So physical climate risk is the financial impact. It's a impact of climate events, perils on business, on economic activity, on supply chain. So delays mean money, right? So this is the physical climate. So this was a very simple example, but so physical climate risk is also the cost of properties. So the properties in highly exposed areas, they tend to devaluate. For example, some properties become uninsurable because they're in the areas where insurance companies no longer provide flood or wildfire insurance. So these are the examples of physical climate risk. How to evaluate them? It's similar to regression. So regression, let's say in the perfect world, if you had long time series of floods and long time series of pricings, of losses or damages, there could be a regression. But in our case, the time series for losses are never long enough, because this economic information started to be collected quite recently, actually, only since 15-20 years. For insurance data, there is only maybe 10 years of data available for this type of flood and wildfire perils. For economic data, for example, for renewable energies, they exist since 20 years. So again, the records are very short. So the physical risk assessment, the impact assessment, is evaluated for those events which are documented, where you really see the link between the event and the loss. This can be further remodeled. So, for example, if we have the information about wildfires in the past over 10 years, we can reconstruct backwards this information also. So if the world was frozen, let's say, at the state as it is now, economic activities, if it was the same as it is now, how many properties would be impacted over 70 years, for example, in the past, having the climate conditions we had. So this is the object.
Okay, so now this involves looking backward, but it also involves looking forward, right? To make a forward-looking risk assessment for climate perils like floods. How do you know in advance, or how do you go about identifying the possibilities in advance? How many floods will happen, let's say, in the state of Pennsylvania, for example, over a given period of time, since much of the data is only recently available for these types of risks? How do you go there?
Yes, exactly. This is the forward-looking is very challenging. It's similar to weather forecast challenge that. We run the forecast with some known parameters, but they are always unknown, and the uncertainty of this forecast is high. So the current scientific approach for forward-looking risk modeling and climate modeling is so first of all, it's multi-model approach. So the national institutions, so Hadley Center in France, it's called Institut Pierre-Simon Laplace. So there are about 120 climate models produced by national research institutions. They run on supercomputers. They run models which are very similar to weather forecast models. But they run longer. They run much more. So they continue running after 7 days. So they run for 100 years, and they reproduce different versions of climate. They reproduce different situations, and this is the baseline for forward-looking risk assessment. And by using not only one model but using a range of models, it gives you a better view of what is possible. There's no one better model than the other. So there's no particular way. There's no reason to say that French model or German model or American is better. And the reality should be somewhere in the middle. So the truth is somewhere in the middle. We use the tools available today. So the good news, so the climate science is developing as fast as the technology. So as you see, the current development of technologies is booming. In climate science and climate modeling, these achievements, they are introduced very actively. So this results in much higher resolution, much more processes can be modeled, much more details can be absorbed within the models and considered. So by including more physics, the modeling should become better and better every year.
That's a very interesting statement. I am from New Orleans, Louisiana, where Hurricane Katrina flooded large parts of the city in 2005. That climate event had been predicted for many, many years before that. And this is in a time before we had the type of data gathering and analysis available that we have today. But even back then, as you were saying, there had been predictions that that kind of an event would eventually happen in that location, and it did. So tell us.
The catastrophe. This was a huge, massive catastrophe.
Yes, it was. And it was predicted essentially from the past by knowledgeable people in climate science at that point in time. So you are a climate scientist with a PhD in geophysics. Now, what attracted you to climate science as a field of expertise? And how do you see climate adaptation contributing to economic resilience over the next couple of decades?
Several questions in one. Yeah, I like this one. Please remind me if I forget something. Paul. Just to mention, so I graduated my 4th year of studies. The year when Hurricane Katrina happened, and just at that moment, I had my internship at ABC6 TV channel in Providence. And my mission was to help Mark Shields and Fred Campagna, the presenters of the channel, to help them make forecasts. And this was a really exceptional year in terms of hurricanes. We went to the University of Rhode Island to meet Isaac Guinness, one of the leading professors in hurricane modeling. At the same time, so I had my internship the right year, the modeling and the forecasting hurricanes and forecasting weather on the TV channel. So whatever we discover in climate change, about climate change. So we, first of all, scientists, they always verify. So it's never happens that we just calculated something once and we launch it in the journal, right? So it's always verified. Different scientists verify, rereads, or their editors' journals. So this information is very useful for climate adaptation resilience. Because it gives the insight about all the possibilities. So this every event that happens reviews the knowledge, right? So after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of adaptation resilience projects were reviewed in terms of thresholds. The bar was they rose the bar for what is feasible, what is possible. It was really reconsidered. Unfortunately, for many resilience and adaptation projects, we are waiting first the worst to happen before we start doing something. So this is unfortunately how things go. So floods in Pakistan, like this year, they do happen, and this was not the worst flood that Pakistan had during last 70 years. But still, the situation we see now. This is so in adaptation. In resilience, what is breaking point is the finance for adaptation and resilience. Right now, the governmental funds are sponsoring this adaptation resilience project. And there's very few. There are very few examples of subsidies for insurance, for example. So typically, it's either the commercial insurance. Either if governments they had the funding, they built a flood protection, flood defenses. The new finance, the municipality adaptation bonds, the green bonds and the carbon credits, they could be channeled towards this resilience and mitigation adaptation program. So the private fundings should be also used for this project. So one of the challenges for United Nations projects, for climate finance experts, to find the technical and financial solutions, how the private finance could be oriented towards this project, because right now it works very well for carbon reduction. So for carbon reduction, it's the channeling on the finance, it works very well. Now there is a new step, is channeling the finance towards adaptation resilience. So this is our role in this. This project also helps to evaluate financially the impact of action and non-action. So this is very important argument also for channeling the funding towards adaptation resilience projects, is explaining that if there is no action, these are the losses and damages. These are insurable losses and damages and uninsurable losses and damages. And if there is resilience, if there is a investment, how the numbers compare, how the new numbers compare to this quantitative assessment is a very big piece of the argumentation for adaptation and resilience, new project, for making new project. And it's so technical, scientific, and financial. So it's all together.
All of those rolled up together. Well, listen, we're just about out of time for today's program, Elena, but I did want to mention specifically that the Weather TradeNet has won several recent awards as a technology startup. We don't have time to have you describe all of those awards, but can you tell us, our audience, why you chose to enter those competitions? And then maybe you can send us links to the stories that mention your firm as a winner of those awards, and we'll attach that to the podcast program.
Thank you. Yes, with pleasure. I will share the links, and happy to answer further the questions, and happy to share experience and to contribute to meaningful and scientific and adaptation projects. Thank you for having me today.
Okay, well, Elena, where online can Sustainable Finance podcast followers learn more about the Weather TradeNet, and how can they get in touch with you about the topics that we've discussed in today's program?
Thank you. So we have a website, weathertrade.net. Also, we have a YouTube channel for Weather TradeNet, where we record the very short demos for the platform that we launched, but also on hot topics. So this resilience and adaptation and impact assessment solutions. Please contact me at elena.maksimovich at weathertrade.net and LinkedIn.
Terrific. Well, listen, I visited your website, and it's fascinating to go in and zero in on the place where you live and work, or where I live and work, and get the information that you have. It's quite extensive. I'm very impressed with the way that part of the platform works. So thanks again to Elena Maksimovich. Oh, go ahead.
Very short. That we are preparing open data also for Google Earth. So this will be an important piece, so that everything I was telling you during half an hour, it can become open data.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again to Elena Maksimovich, CEO and lead founder at Weather TradeNet, and to our listeners. Join us again next week for another episode. I'm Paul Ellis, and this is the Sustainable Finance Podcast.